What is up guys, it's Aaron from Rudy Visuals, and in today's video I want to share with you my top 10 tips to improve your videos. So let's go. So first of all, apologies for not uploading anything for the past couple of weeks. We have both been super busy, and actually at the moment I am in Vietnam. I'd love to be able to do like some travel type videos for you guys, but I'm actually here for work reasons, so I don't really have much time to do anything like that. Quite a few of you guys have been commenting on like things you can do to improve your videos. So whether you're doing vlogs or cinematic videos or music videos or travel videos, whatever kind of videos you're into doing, here are my personal top 10 tips to improve your videos. So tip number 1 is to mix up your focal lengths. So to make your videos more engaging and more exciting and more interesting for your viewer to actually watch, you want to mix up your focal lengths. What I mean by this is basically have a combination of wide angles, of medium shots, of close-ups. If you're just shooting everything all super wide the entire time, or if you're shooting everything super close-up, it can feel a little bit stale and gives this like feeling of like your video dragging on a little bit. So mixing up your focal lengths keeps the video more engaging and more exciting for the viewer. Tip number 2, this is to eliminate dead space. So dead space is a term used for things around you, basically like the space around the subject that isn't really useful for anything. So every time you go out and you're shooting a shot, look at your frame and ask yourself what here is actually what's actually important in the shot. If it's not important, get rid of it by reframing your shot. Think about what the focus of your shot should be. Anything that's distracting you from that shot isn't serving you any purpose. So eliminating dead space, that is a very easy tip to improve the look of your videos. Tip number 3 is very closely related to tip number 2, and that is framing and compositions. So there are a ton of tutorials out there, a ton of resources that teach you about the rule of thirds and the proper way to frame and compose your shots. Think about what is the purpose of this actual shot. Am I following a character? Am I following like their feet? Am I looking at a specific detail or specific item that's key to this shot? Am I looking at a huge building? Whatever it is, you want to frame and compose your shots in a way that highlights what you're trying to focus on in the most pleasing way possible. Now, of course, the rule of thirds isn't like the be-all and end-all, but if you're new to filmmaking or photography, it's a great way to build your eye for composing shots. So I definitely recommend reading up and doing as much research as you can on framing and composition. Tip number 4 is to use sound to your advantage. Now, my first actual tip relating to sound is to get a decent microphone. The built-in microphones in your phones and your like cheaper cameras tend to not be very good quality, so you do definitely want to buy an external microphone just so that your sound is a lot more clearer. Here is a perfectly acceptable microphone for about 35–40 pounds. It's not the best quality microphone I've ever used, but it's such a big upgrade over the microphones in like smartphones and in DSLRs that for me it's money very well spent. Once you have a good microphone, use sound to your advantage in videos. So if you're out in the city, record those ambient sounds of like people talking, of trains going by. If you're shooting a scene somewhere in a park or somewhere really peaceful, record that ambient noise of like birds singing, of waterfalls, and add these sounds into your video to give that extra dimension, essentially making your viewer feel as if they're actually there. Okay, that leads me nicely into my next tip, which is to use music in your videos and edit to the music. So there's loads of ways of approaching editing a video to music. A very common technique is to edit to the beat. So typically following like the drum pattern, or you can follow things that are actually happening in the music if there's like a kick drum, or following maybe a lead vocal or a guitar harmony, something like that. But essentially what you want to do is have your video and music working together and having the video react to what's happening in the music and vice versa. Okay, so my next tip is to use slow motion, and this kind of is like a half tip. It's like use slow motion and also understand FPS, so frames per second. The conventional wisdom is to use 24 frames per second because that's the general frame rate that they use in most movies. What I like to do is to shoot at a higher frame rate and then conform it back down to 24, and that's what creates that slow, smooth, slow motion effect. Very common mistake I see is people actually shooting in 24 or 25 or 30 and then slowing down that footage, and then you get that choppy slow motion. But what you actually need to do is shoot at a higher frame rate and then slow that down. So then you get those extra frames to smooth it all out. This is a pretty huge topic, so again, something that I would definitely recommend that you research and find out about. Again, there's tons of videos on YouTube about it. But generally speaking, if you want to go for that cinematic look, then go for 24 frames per second. And if you want that slow motion, shoot at a higher frame rate and conform it back down to 24. So hopefully that made sense. It made sense to me. If it didn't make sense to you, I'm sorry. So my next tip is kind of a controversial one, because when I made a video about transitions earlier, I know that a lot of people commented saying that they actually quite like transitions, but my tip is to actually keep your transitions to a minimum. Now, the reason I say this is because I think transitions have become so like commonplace now, especially in like B-roll and travel videos and that kind of thing, that I actually think a lot of them look quite cheesy. Don't get me wrong, some of them look very cool, and when you use them in the right way at the right time, it can add such a great like impact. But when you're using transitions all the friggin' time, it kind of just takes away from the original video. Like, I kind of just want to see what's going on. I don't want to see zooms and zoom outs and spins and flying here and flying out, and it's just too much. My personal opinion is that overusing them can overpower your video. So you kind of want to treat it like seasoning, you know? You want to sprinkle a little bit here and there, but you don't want it to be like the main ingredient. So hopefully, again, that makes sense. Use them sparingly and don't be afraid to just keep it simple. Okay, so my next tip is to use a shallow depth of field. Using a lens that has a wide aperture, letting in as much light as possible, which then separates the background. So I think you can see if I come in nice and close how blurry that background is. This is used so often in like pretty much every movie I can think of and TV show you can think of. DSLRs can easily achieve that shallow depth of field look if you have the right glass. Now, for those of you who complain that lenses are too expensive or anything like that, I have this lens here. I always talk about this lens, the Nifty 50. It's $100. The shallow depth of field you can get on this is amazing. So no complaints if you're using a DSLR to shoot your videos. Get something like this and you'll be getting that shallow depth of field look straight away. But yes, using a shallow depth of field will make your videos look more cinematic and more professional. Okay, so my penultimate tip is to stabilize your footage. And I know this is a very obvious one. I see shaky camera footage all the time and it looks terrible. I mean, there are times, of course, when shaky footage can be used for like great effect. And there are some TV shows actually where they use shaky footage, like in The Office or in Breaking Bad, to kind of give that kind of realism to your video. If you're going for that pro slick look, gimbals now for like smartphones and for like lower end lighter cameras are not really that expensive. They're definitely way more affordable than they were, say, like 10 years ago. Luckily, a lot of cameras now come in with built-in stabilizers. So like the GoPro, the latest GoPro has a stabilizer, and a lot of lenses use image stabilization too. So if you can stabilize the footage, do it. Sorry guys, I just wanted to add to that point. If you don't have the resources to get a gimbal, then don't worry about it. You can always stabilize your footage just using a tripod or a monopod, or even just learning to actually hold the camera still. A great method I like to use to stabilize my camera when I'm using handheld is I have the camera strapped around my neck, and then I actually stretch the camera out so that it's nice and stiff, and that makes the camera really stable. And there are always ways of adding stabilization to your videos in post as well. For example, warp stabilizer in Premiere Pro. So there are other ways to stabilize your footage if you don't have access to a gimbal. Anyway, back to the video. And my final tip is to use good lighting in your videos. So of course, when I first started out YouTube, I had no idea about lighting. I would film my video like this. Essentially, lighting for me is the most important thing that you can have in your arsenal, and whether or not you have the greatest, most expensive camera in the world or the cheapest camera, if you don't understand and use good lighting to your advantage, your videos are never going to look that good. So invest in a simple lighting kit or something small like this aperture light that I use for when I'm traveling, coupled with nice natural light. It's going to make your videos look so much more pleasing to the eye. If you are out and about outside, try to avoid shooting when it's like harsh sunlight or like noon when the sun is right above you. This is because the lighting at this time is really unflattering. Plus, if you're taking videos of yourself or of people, you're gonna get people squinting and sweating, and it's just not the most flattering time to shoot people. So you want a nice cloudy day when the light is a lot more even. Or if you want to go for that really lush cinematic look, then shoot at my favorite time, which is golden hour. This is at sunset or at sunrise. Now, professional lighting kits can be pretty expensive, admittedly. We have used lighting kits on paid shoots that are over £1,000. We've also used like really cheap £30 lighting kits that we've gotten off Amazon, and they do a pretty decent job. We actually shot this video on a very expensive lighting kit compared to this video, which was shot on a kit that cost 30 quid. There are big differences between the two, but just for simple YouTube videos, this looks perfectly fine. The quality of the actual stand and the actual lighting kit itself and the bulb, they're not great, but again, they're better than nothing. It does help you to learn and understand lighting and how to properly light a scene. So yeah, lighting is such a useful element, such a useful tool in video. So my final tip is to invest in some decent lighting, or just to learn about lighting and shoot at a time when the lighting is the most flattering. Okay, well, there you have it, guys. Those are my top 10 tips to help improve your videos. Hopefully most of that made sense. If it didn't, feel free to leave a question in the comment section below. If you like this video, please do me a huge favor and give it a like, leave a comment. And if you're new here, we'd love it if you subscribe to our channel. If you'd like to see more of me and Vera, feel free to follow us on Instagram and on Facebook, where we spend a lot of our time. And yeah, I guess that's the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I guess we'll see you on the next video. Okay.